It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Medford, Massachusetts, when 6-year-old Jamie Cooper disappeared. October 12th, 2018. A date that would forever be etched into the memory of the quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Boston. The maple trees that lined Mystic Valley Parkway had just begun to turn vibrant shades of orange and red, creating a picturesque backdrop that belied the tragedy about to unfold. "Jamie, lunch will be ready in 15 minutes, called Sarah Cooper from the kitchen window that overlooked their modest backyard. She watched her son, a small figure in a blue Patriots jersey, kneeling by his favorite climbing tree, apparently absorbed in some sort of game with his action figures. Sarah smiled. To herself, Jamie had been begging to invite friends over, but with her husband Daniel working overtime at Boston Medical Center all week, she had convinced Jamie to play alone today. "Okay, Mom," Jamie called back, his voice carried on the autumn breeze. Sarah turned back to the stove, stirring the pot of homemade tomato soup, Jamie's favorite. 15 minutes later, she returned to the window. "Jamie, lunch is ready." No response came from the yard. "Jamie?" Sarah called again, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and stepped onto the back porch. The yard was empty. Jamie's action figures lay abandoned by the base of the maple tree. Sarah felt the first flutter of concern. "Jamie, this isn't funny. Come out now, please!" She checked behind the garden shed, inside the small playhouse Daniel had built last summer, and behind the row of hydrangea bushes along the fence. No Jamie. She circled the house, calling his name with increasing urgency. By the time she'd completed a second, more frantic search of the yard and garage, panic had firmly taken hold. With trembling fingers, Sarah dialed her husband's number. "He was just there, Daniel," she sobbed 20 minutes later when he rushed home from his shift. "I only took my eyes off him for 15 minutes. The gate was locked. I don't understand how he could have gotten out." Daniel's face was ashen as he put his arm around his wife. "I've already called 911. The police are on their way." By nightfall, the Coopers' backyard was illuminated by the harsh lights of police vehicles. Officers combed through the yard and surrounding areas, while Detective Lisa Morales interviewed the visibly shaken parents in their living room. "Did Jamie have any particular hiding places he liked?" Detective Morales asked, her pen poised above her notepad. "We've checked everywhere," Daniel said, his voice hoarse. "The yard isn't that big. There's nowhere he could be hiding that we wouldn't have found him." "What about friends or relatives he might have tried to visit?" Sarah shook her head. "Everyone we've called is helping with the search. No one has seen him." "The gate," Daniel suddenly interjected. "It has a child-proof lock. Jamie couldn't have opened it himself." Detective Morales nodded gravely. "We'll be checking for any signs of forced entry. In the meantime, we need recent photos of Jamie and a list of what he was wearing today." As the night deepened, neighbors joined the search parties that fanned out through the surrounding streets and wooded area behind Middlesex Fells Reservation. Local news crews arrived, their cameras capturing the growing desperation on the faces of volunteers combing through the neighborhood with flashlights. In the Cooper home, Sarah sat rigidly on the couch, clutching Jamie's teddy bear. The house phone rang constantly, family, friends, and concerned neighbors offering support and asking for updates. But there was no news. Jamie Cooper had vanished without a trace from his own backyard on a quiet autumn afternoon. By the morning of October 13th, Jamie Cooper's disappearance had become front-page news across Massachusetts. The Amber Alert that had blared across cell phones the previous evening was now accompanied by his smiling face on every local television station. Detective Morales established a command center in the community hall of the nearby First Baptist Church. Maps of Medford were pinned to corkboards with colored pins marking areas already searched and those still pending investigation. Volunteers signed in and out, accepting assignments to canvass specific neighborhoods or distribute flyers with Jamie's information. "We're treating this as a potential abduction," Morales explained to the assembled search team coordinators. "The locked gate and the lack of any trace suggests someone may have taken him." The revelation sent a chill through the room. What had been a desperate search for a missing child now carried darker implications. At the Cooper home, forensic technicians in white coveralls meticulously examined the backyard. They took soil samples, photographed footprints, and collected fibers from the fence and gate. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, her eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. "They think someone took him, don't they?" she asked Daniel, who stood beside her, his own face haggard with worry. Daniel couldn't bring himself to respond. Instead, he pulled his wife close, both of them drawing what little comfort they could from each other's presence. Outside, the house media trucks lined the street. Reporters delivered somber updates against the backdrop of the Cooper home, now surrounded by yellow police tape. Social media was flooded with Jamie's photos, and the hashtag #FindJamieCooper began trending nationally. By the afternoon, FBI agents had joined the investigation. Special Agent Kevin Harlow met with the Coopers and Detective Morales in the living room. "We're going to need to look into every aspect of your lives," he explained, gently but firmly. "Your work, your finances, any conflicts or disputes you might have had. It may feel invasive, but it's necessary." Daniel nodded numbly. "Whatever it takes, we just want our son back." The investigation expanded rapidly. Police interviewed the Coopers' neighbors, particularly those whose properties backed onto the same wooded area. Security camera footage from nearby homes was collected and analyzed. Jamie's school records were examined and his teachers interviewed. On the evening news, the Middlesex County District Attorney stood beside the Medford Police Chief at a press conference. "We are utilizing every resource available to find Jamie Cooper," the DA assured the public. "But we also need the community's help. If you saw anything unusual in the Mystic Valley Parkway area on Thursday afternoon, no matter how insignificant it might seem, please contact our tip line." As day 2 of the search ended with no significant leads, a grim reality began to settle. Over the investigation, statistics showed that the chances of finding a missing child decreased dramatically after the first 48 hours. In their home, surrounded by relatives who had arrived to support them, Sarah and Daniel clung to hope. Jamie's grandparents had arrived from New Hampshire, bringing with them photo albums and memories that only deepened the ache of his absence. "He has to be somewhere," Sarah whispered late that night as she and Daniel lay awake in their bedroom. "People don't just vanish." But as the hours ticked by and the search radius expanded further from their quiet suburban neighborhood, the weight of uncertainty grew heavier. Where was Jamie Cooper? And who had taken him from his own backyard? By October 16th, 4 days after Jamie's disappearance, the search effort had transformed the small community of Medford. The local supermarket donated bottled water and food for volunteers. The high school canceled its homecoming parade, redirecting those resources to printing thousands more flyers with Jamie's photo. Churches held prayer vigils and psychology. Counselors offered free sessions to frightened parents and children struggling to process the situation. The Cooper home had become the epicenter of an operation that now spanned multiple law enforcement agencies. The dining room table was covered with maps, volunteer schedules, and stacks of tip sheets that needed to be followed up on. The refrigerator was filled with casseroles and meals dropped off by neighbors, food that mostly went untouched as Sarah and Daniel moved through each day in a fog of anxiety and diminishing hope. That morning, Detective Morales arrived with several new faces. Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, this is Roy Simmons from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She introduced a tall man with kind eyes. And this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, a forensic psychologist who specializes in child disappearance cases. The new arrivals brought fresh perspectives to the investigation. Roy coordinated with national databases and media outlets to ensure Jamie's information reached the widest possible audience. Dr. Vasquez worked on creating a geographic profile based on similar cases, helping to prioritize search areas. Meanwhile, the FBI had been investigating every person who had regular access to the Cooper home, or who might have known Jamie's routines. The mail carrier, the garbage collectors, service workers who had recently been in the house, all were interviewed and cleared. Special Agent Harlow sat down with Sarah and Daniel that afternoon. We've been looking into a registered sex offender who moved to Winchester about 3 months ago, he explained carefully. He's currently being questioned, but I want to be clear, this is just one of many leads we're pursuing. Sarah clutched Daniel's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. The mere thought that Jamie might be in the hands of such a person was almost unbearable. As the day progressed, volunteers continued to methodically search areas that had been mapped out by the coordination team. They waded through the marshy sections of the Mystic River, checked abandoned buildings, and scoured the dense woods of the Middlesex Fells Reservation for the third time. Maria Delgado, a retired nurse who lived 2 streets over from the Coopers, had been volunteering since day one. Despite her arthritic knees, she had walked miles distributing flyers. On this 4th day of searching, she was assigned to hand out flyers at the Winchester Farmers Market. That poor family, she said to her search partner as they taped Jamie's photo to lampposts. I can't imagine what they're going through. By evening, the day's search ended with the same devastating result as the previous 3. No sign of Jamie. The press conference that night was brief and subdued. The police chief acknowledged that while they were pursuing several leads, they still had no concrete evidence pointing to Jamie's whereabouts. Later that night, after most of the volunteers and officials had left, Sarah sat alone in Jamie's bedroom. She straightened his dinosaur bedspread and adjusted the collection of stuffed animals that lined his pillow. On his bedside table sat a framed photo of Jamie at the beach last summer, his gap-toothed smile radiant as he held up a starfish he'd found. Please come home, she whispered to the empty room. Please be safe. Downstairs, Daniel was reviewing the timeline of events for what felt like the 100th time with Detective Morales when his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Mr. Cooper? A man's voice asked when Daniel answered. Yes, who is this? My name is Edward Garrison. I'm the one who has your son. Daniel's blood ran cold as he frantically motioned for Detective Morales's attention. I want $500,000 by tomorrow night, the voice continued. I'll call with instructions. No police or you'll never see him again. The call ended abruptly, leaving Daniel staring at Detective Morales with a mixture of horror and renewed hope. Jamie was alive, or at least someone wanted them to believe he was. October 17th dawned grey and drizzly, the weather matching the somber mood that had settled over the Cooper household following the ransom call. FBI technicians had immediately set up recording equipment on the Coopers' phones, while agents worked to trace the origin of the previous night's call. It came from a burner phone purchased with cash at a convenience store in Somerville, Special Agent Harlow explained to Sarah and Daniel. The store's security cameras were down for maintenance that day, so we don't have footage of the buyer. What do we do when he calls again? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Keep him talking as long as possible, Detective Morales. Advised, ask for proof that Jamie is okay. Ask to speak to him. We need verification that this person actually has your son and isn't just exploiting the situation. The hours crept by with excruciating slowness. Daniel paced the living room floor while Sarah sat motionless on the couch, her eyes fixed on the phone. Outside, the rain grew heavier, beating a steady rhythm on the roof. Around 2 p.m., Monica Jenkins, the landscaper who maintained several properties in the neighborhood, arrived at the house across the street from the Coopers. Despite the weather, she had weekly maintenance scheduled, and with all the disruption in the neighborhood over the past few days, she was already behind on her jobs. Monica pulled on her rain jacket and began the routine work of trimming overgrown bushes and clearing fallen leaves. The police had already searched this area thoroughly in the days following Jamie's disappearance, but as Monica pushed her way into a particularly dense holly bush to clear out dead branches, something caught her eye, a flash of metal half buried in the mulch. Reaching down, she carefully extracted a small Batman keychain with 2 keys attached. Her heart began to race as she realized what she was holding. She had seen Jamie Cooper's photo on every news broadcast for days, and she remembered the description of what he had been carrying: a Batman action figure and a keychain with house keys that his parents had given him as a symbol of growing responsibility. Monica immediately called the police. Within minutes, the quiet street was once again filled with patrol cars and officers cordoning off the area. Detective Morales arrived shortly after, carefully placing the keychain in an evidence bag. "This is definitely Jamie's," Daniel confirmed when shown a photo of the keychain. "We gave it to him on his birthday last month. It has a key to the front door and one to his grandparents' house." The discovery electrified the investigation. How had the keychain ended up in a bush across the street when Jamie had disappeared from the backyard? Had he managed to cross the street without Sarah noticing, or had someone taken him and dropped the keychain while carrying him away? Forensic technicians returned to comb the area around the holly bush with renewed vigor, while K9 units were brought in to try to pick up a scent trail. The steady rain complicated their efforts, potentially washing away crucial evidence. As this new search intensified, the Cooper's phone rang. Daniel answered with trembling hands while FBI technicians monitored the call. "Do you have the money?" the same voice from the previous night demanded. "We're working on it," Daniel replied, following the script the FBI had prepared. "But I need to know my son is okay. Let me talk to Jamie." There was a pause on the line. "No calls, just the money, tomorrow at noon." "Please," Sarah interjected, her voice breaking, "just let us hear his voice. We found his keychain today. We know someone has him." Another pause, longer this time. Then, unexpectedly, the man hung up. Special Agent Harlow frowned. "That's not typical kidnapper behavior. Usually they're prepared to offer proof of life." Detective Morales nodded in agreement. "Something doesn't add up here." The discovery of the keychain and the strange phone call prompted a reassessment of the entire investigation. Officers returned to interview neighbors who had already been questioned, this time focusing specifically on the period right before Jamie's disappearance. One neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Reed, an elderly woman who spent most days watching the street from her front window, provided a crucial new detail. "I did see something odd that day," she told Detective Morales. "A white van parked across the street for about an hour. Not a delivery van, just plain white. I didn't think much of it until now." This new information, combined with the location of the keychain, suggested that Jamie might have been lured across the street, perhaps by someone he knew or trusted. As evening approached, the FBI's technical team made a breakthrough. They had managed to triangulate the general location of the burner phone used for the ransom calls. It was coming from within a half-mile radius of the Cooper home. Special Agent Harlow immediately organized teams to canvass the area. focusing on motels, rental properties, and abandoned buildings where someone might be hiding with a child. At 8:37 p.m., officers responding to an unrelated noise complaint at the Pine Tree Motel, just 6 blocks from the Cooper home, noticed a white van matching Mrs. Reed's description parked behind the building. When they knocked on the door of room 114, they heard the sound of furniture being moved and a back window opening. What happened next unfolded with dizzying speed. Officers forced entry into the motel room to find it recently abandoned, with fast food wrappers, blankets, and a child's drawing left behind. Meanwhile, other officers pursued a figure fleeing through the woods behind the motel. The chase ended when the suspect, a man in his 40s, slipped on the rain-soaked ground and was apprehended. He was identified as Thomas Wheeler, a former maintenance worker at Jamie's elementary school who had been fired 6 months earlier for inappropriate behavior. But Wheeler was alone. There was no sign of Jamie. When confronted with the evidence, Wheeler broke down and confessed. He admitted to making the ransom calls, but insisted he had never taken Jamie. He had simply been exploiting the situation for money, having seen the news reports about the missing boy. This devastating revelation meant the investigation was back at square one, until a forensic technician processing the motel room made a discovery. Among the items left behind was a receipt from a hardware store in Woburn, dated the day after Jamie's disappearance. Police rushed to the store and reviewed their security footage. There on camera was Thomas Wheeler purchasing duct tape, rope, and a padlock. But more importantly, the footage showed him arguing with another man in the parking lot, a man identified as Keith Larson, the Coopers' former gardener who had been fired by Daniel last summer after being caught stealing tools. A search warrant was quickly obtained for Larson's apartment in Woburn. When police arrived, they found the unit empty, but neighbors reported hearing a child crying in recent days. Further investigation revealed that Larson had a hunting cabin in the woods near Billerica, about 20 minutes away. As FBI SWAT teams surrounded the remote cabin in the early hours of October 18th, they could see light from a kerosene lamp through the windows. The rescue operation was swift and precise. Within minutes, agents had secured the cabin and found Jamie Cooper, alive, frightened, but physically unharmed. He had been kept in the cabin's small basement room with food, water, and even his favorite comic books that Larson had apparently packed when taking him. When Jamie was carried out of the cabin and into the arms of a waiting paramedic, the radio call went out. "We have him. Jamie Cooper is safe." Sarah and Daniel, who had been waiting at the Medford police station during the operation, collapsed into tears when they received the news. An hour later, they were reunited with their son at Massachusetts General Hospital, where doctors confirmed that despite his ordeal, Jamie was in good health. Keith Larson was taken into custody and eventually confessed. His motive, as he explained it, was revenge against Daniel Cooper for firing him and then reporting him to other potential clients in the area, effectively blacklisting him from local landscaping work. He had watched the house for weeks, learning routines and planning the abduction. The keychain had fallen from Jamie's pocket during the kidnapping when Larson had carried the sedated boy to his van. In the days that followed, the community of Medford continued to show their support for the Cooper family. Neighbors lined the street with blue ribbons, Jamie's favorite color, to welcome him home. His school classmates created a massive "Welcome Back" card, and Monica Jenkins, the landscaper who found the keychain, was honored by the mayor for her crucial role in breaking the case. For the Coopers, the 5 days of their son's absence had felt like an eternity. The psychological scars would take time to heal, but as they settled back into their home with new security measures in place and a renewed appreciation for each moment together, they were overwhelmed by gratitude for the community that had come together in their darkest hour to bring Jamie home. On the 1-month anniversary of Jamie's rescue, the Cooper family established a foundation to help other families of missing children, ensuring that something positive would emerge from their harrowing experience. And across Medford, blue ribbons remained tied to trees and lampposts, a reminder of how a community united could triumph even in the face of unimaginable fear.